Thank you, Jennifer. So, as many of you know, I like to get a little philosophical at times, help you see the bigger picture. So I'd like to set the stage for the week and trigger your imagination, to show you the power of scale and perspective in order to help you glimpse the possible. So we're going to start with a short video entitled Orders of Magnitude. Feel free to get up and dance. So how many people here are from Chicago? And how many of you could name the field that the guy was lying on? If you go back to that video, you'll see it's right next to the old Meigs field, which is no longer there. But it's a fascinating video. But I want you to think for a minute about that video. Whether the Earth is a featureless black ball, or a glistening white speck, or a blue sphere with mountains and lakes, depends upon where you are on the continuum of scale, and whether you have ever seen mountains and lakes before. That's the power of perspective. We live and work every day at the interface of medicine and science. Many of us came for the former but stayed for the latter. As medicine scientists, we know that what we see depends in part upon the context. What you first see with your naked eye guides your thinking under the microscope. A few orders of magnitude can make a big difference. Even the apparent laws of physics can change. Indeed, there can be an entirely different understanding of how things work depending upon the scale. How we see and how we interpret all depend upon where we reside on that continuum. What we need to know in order to survive on Earth may actually not be relevant in outer space. So consider, for example, the mission, believe it or not, of CMS and other payers. It is not to treat or control disease. Their job, their mission, their job is to provide the resources and thereby the means for each part of the house of medicine to function. And that's where we come in. We cannot expect regulators to know medicine. They work in a different part of the continuum and from a different perspective, with its own internal logic that actually make sense to them. We must communicate up and down the continuum and understand the internal logic at each point. And to do so, we must pay attention to the power of perspective. Someone has to consider how the words in a Medicare edict will play out in practice for pathologists in Peoria. For us, that is the role of the CAP advocacy team, working together with you as the voice of the membership. This week, we're here to learn from one another, to find ways of looking at things, and also to reinforce our shared perspective. That is one reason why our curriculum committee created 2 scientific plenaries of almost certain universal interest. The opening plenary session tomorrow in the morning will feature a panel of experts in cancer immunotherapy, a pathologist, an oncologist, and a patient. They will describe new treatment strategies that target the host immune response while incorporating traditional approaches. Both physicians are doing groundbreaking work. The patient will bring it home, reinforcing and reminding us that patients are always at the heart of what we do. As physicians, we need to keep our patients central to all of these conversations. Dr. Stephen Sverdlow will give our second plenary session on Tuesday evening. He is the lead editor for the 2008 WHO monograph on the classification of hematopoietic and lymphoid tumors. Dr. Sverdlow's perspective has been developed over 4 decades of work, mostly with malignant lymphomas. His talk will be pathology viewed through a visionary's prism. We are watching and participating in how healthcare is evolving right now. Remember, medicine is a team sport now, because that's where the science took us. Increasingly, pathologists are at the intersection of science and medicine. We'll be doing more translating for an audience that is less scientifically aware. Our health system will demand more and more from mid-level providers, many of whom may be taking on responsibilities they honestly never bargained for. We can help by revising the terminology in our order forms and our reports, by looking for signs of guesswork on submitted orders, and by doing what is possible to give the providers what they need in order to care for patients in a language they can understand, one that speaks to their perspective. Medicine continues to evolve along curious and sometimes haphazard paths. Earlier this summer, I was honored to represent the CAP at Vice President Biden's Cancer Moonshot meeting in D.C. Nearly 300 launch events were held around the country that summer. More than 6,000 cancer researchers, tech wizards, patient advocates, health policy leaders, industry people, and physicians took part. Curiously, physicians were not the focus of the day. Yet, there was a very strong presence of big pharma and corporate genomics. The driving idea behind the moonshot is to accelerate the pace of discovery by fostering investment, investigation, and cooperation across the usual silos, and to make it easier for patients to find clinical trials and for researchers to share that information. The rollout comes next. It may take our journey to a new level because policy is one thing, but proof of concept is local. That's where we come in. At the Moonshot meeting, I had an opportunity to speak with Dr. Cliff Hudis, who's ASCO's new CEO. We talked about our shared sandbox of accelerated collaboration in cancer research. Medical leadership is needed to ensure that an informed perspective premised on firsthand knowledge, which knows how things actually work. The real action will be in the laboratory and at the bedside, and we will need to translate. So what is our next task? We can galvanize interest among our colleagues. We can make sure that our clinical partners, researchers, nurses, and administrators see the opportunities. We can help mid-level practitioners and physician extenders learn to interpret the information that will become more available. as clinical trials are more easily accessed. And that is why it is important to create and supplement guidelines to ensure uniform application. So let me give you an example. Not too long ago, there was great excitement when trastuzumab, Herceptin, became available for breast cancer, for the treatment. But by 2007, we began to realize that as many as 1 in 5 tests for HER2 new status could be inaccurate. There were very loud calls to resolve this problem by centralizing all HER2 testing nationwide. I don't know if the pathologists or the oncologists were more frantic, but something had to happen fast. So CAP and ASCO created a multidisciplinary team to subsidize HER2 new testing in breast cancer. Pathologists needed to understand at a molecular level how the clinical oncologists were interpreting the information coming to them from the laboratory. And oncologists, in turn, needed to communicate at a clinical level what they needed for their patients in ways that would make sense to the pathologists. It was all about perspective. Taking the time to communicate clearly created new value for all. Testing became standardized, the results became reliable, and oncologists could stop giving drugs to those patients who would not respond and reserve those resources for those who would, thereby saving lives, money, and morbidity. It truly was a magnificent big picture outcome. And in time, it became the foundation for the CAP Pathology and Laboratory Quality Center. More and more center projects are investigating the use of biomarkers in cancer research and treatment. And through the center, we have partnered with specialty groups to write 9 sets of practice guidelines, and 11 more are in the works. Earlier this month, the Houston Methodist Department of Pathology presented an excellent meeting, Cancer Biomarkers Conference 2. It was really powerful to see the continued impact of biomarkers becoming more clear with the help of CAP Center guidelines. And we are helping to bring many patients closer to cutting-edge diagnostics and treatment tools. The moonshot rollout will be more work for busy people. It could be a turning point in terms of perspective. Jordan Ellenberg, you know, sometimes I like to tell little stories. This is a cute story. But Jordan Ellenberg tells a story about this in his book, How Not to Be Wrong, The Power of Mathematical Thinking. If you're a little geeky, I encourage you to pick up the book. I enjoyed it. He introduces Abraham Wald. Abraham Wald was a mathematician who escaped from Europe before it all blew up for World War II. And in the US, he advised the US military during World War II. In 1943, far too many planes were getting shot down. The planes that came back typically had a bullet-ridden tail and fuselage. The generals wanted to improve the survivability of their planes. So they asked how to better protect the tail and fuselage and where to put heavy armor. Wald wanted to know about what he did not see. So he asked the generals a very simple question. What about the planes that didn't come back? Because he knew that that would lead to the answer to their real question. And if you read Ellenberg's account, you can almost hear the silence in that room. Fewer planes were coming back with engine damage. Fewer planes coming back with engine damage did not show that the engines were better protected. Rather, it showed that the planes with engine damage didn't make it home. Wald saw the big picture. And he knew that the right question is often more useful than a quick answer. Similarly, if you were to spend a weekend night in the lobby at a typical urban hospital ER, you could see many patients coming in with bullet wounds as they come in from the ambulance. If instead, however, you spent the time in the ER recovery room, you'd see patients with wounds in their arms and legs, but far fewer with bullet wounds in their chest. Think about it. You would have a completely different perspective of the damage done and also of the problem that needs to be solved. As pathologists, we are trained to look for the planes that do not come back, to think about what we do not see, and to examine the patients who do not survive. So much depends upon when you ask, whom you ask, where you look, and where you stand. Clinicians are close to the bone on the patient's medical care side. We are deep in the weeds in the science of that care. Our patients need both science and medicine. Good health policy does too. So as we step deeper into population-based thinking, local health planners will realize that we have the knowledge and skill needed for informed public health policy. This week, we will enjoy learning from people who are comfortable with uncertainty, who habitually ask themselves, what is it that they should see but do not, and inspire us to seek context and perspective. And sometimes the lesson of looking at the big picture appears in unexpected places. On a recent trip overseas, I was looking at a set of Russian nesting dolls. Here's a picture of them. This is on my desk, my office. When I saw one doll without the others, I couldn't tell who the chubby guy with the gray hair was. But when I looked at them together, Stalin inside Gorbachev, inside Yeltsin, inside Putin, it quickly became clear and entirely recognizable in context. With an informed perspective, we can hear what is not said, we can see what is not shown, and we can interpret what others do not see. Because pathologists seek the planes that do not come back, we seek to identify those who will respond. And we translate for those who may not know the real questions they are asking. What we learn this week will build our perspective and affect how we practice. So our plans for CAP 16 portend an engaging and shape-shifting event. Please, let's all enjoy it.